All right, everybody, we got Andrew here, and he's going to start his talk. So let's settle down real quick and give me your attention. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Hey guys, I'm Andrew. I'm a co-founder of TakeShape, and I'm here with my team, Mark and Sean. So find them afterwards. And today we're going to talk about a developer tale of forms. So we'll scale the mountain and then we'll come safely back home. So forms are hard. Everybody knows forms are hard. But we're not here today to talk about this form. We're here to talk about forms like this, like digital forms that we interact with every day. And you know, with the talks we had tonight, there's some really advanced topics floating around React. And forms have surely been done. You know, every framework does forms. There's a lot of history behind that, and a lot of apps are mainly forms. In fact, my startup is a CMS, and it's mainly forms. So the content editing is a form. The switches are a form. The metadata is a form. The login's even a form. Even the data modeling is represented using forms. And also, we're at a React meetup, so what does React say? Well, it's on the top 10 of main concepts of the React docs, so it should be important. And also NPM agrees. There's over 3,000 packages dedicated to forms. So people have done this a lot, and they've all have their own take on it. So this talk is not super technical, but it is about our journey and how we went about picking a form package, solutions that we tried, and sort of more of a developer journey. So let's go. Let's travel through the Lord of the Rings theme slides that my co-founder put in. Battle a dragon and return to the Shire. So let's look at some code. So the first attempt is always sort of, I can do this, I can handle it, I'm a developer, let's roll our own, of course. How hard can it be? And so, of course, we have the canonical example stolen right from the React docs. Dan Abramov, thank you. So we have a very simple form where we have one input, and it's our name, and a submit button. How much simpler could it get? And so here's what it looks like. Here I am, what's my name? It's Andrew, hit enter. Right now we have an alert to show what happens when we submit. So that's pretty simple. But real apps need more complexity, so let's start with something like validation. Let's add some validation. And here's the same example, and what we've done is we've added some validation here in the submit step. So if we have our name and it didn't exist, we'll throw an error, and so here we go. I don't know how far behind these slides are, but all right, good. It's required. Okay, do this. So if we wanted to implement more complicated validation, we would simply add it in code. So if we wanted to, we'd say else if. We wanted to check the length and say names under the length of 10 are unacceptable. Sorry, I'm not a pro like Jason. All right, there we go. So here we go. Let me try again. Submit. All right. Well, everything here. Anyway, sorry. Let's move on. So with this simple validation thing, there's only a few things missing, right? There's blur and focus handling, there's dirty filtering, there's data normalization, there's user-defined form configuration, there's nested object support. Well, actually, there's a lot of stuff missing from this. So rolling our own didn't go so well. So maybe let's try a framework. One of the popular ones is Redux Form. So in Redux Form, what Redux Form does is it provides us with a nice set of convenience components and a higher order component called Redux Form, which allows us to bind our form to a validate function. So we have these field components, which allow us to define our various form fields, and a validate function, which allows us to do our own validation. So for this example, we've added a form that's much more complicated because Redux Form can handle it. So the length validation that I failed to implement here, Redux Form will do that for me. So if I don't have 10 characters, there we go. Redux Form will cancel me. And of course, it will handle the entire form validation. But let's pop back over to the code here. We have our own manually implemented validate function. As our app grows, we're probably going to need more complicated validation. And writing out these if statements is inconvenient if we want to build more complex forms. So the pros with Redux Form are that, it's great. It manages our state. It's Redux. People love Redux. It's easy to debug. There's a lot of flexibility. The cons are that the form's hard-coded and it's sort of bring your own validation. So let's try adding the happy joy validation. And it's a Ren and Stimpy reference for those of you who remember. So here we go. We have joy and a joyful form. So it's the same form, but right here we have joy, which is basically this really expressive way to define form validation. So you chain together different types and validation expressions. So right here we have an object function, which defines keys, and a title, a join string, regular expression validation, date validation, a lot of stuff that would be a pain for us to implement ourselves. And so we tie it into our own validate function. And then the component largely remains the same. And so we pop over here, we get the same stuff. Oh, okay. I'm not going to make you guys watch me fill out the entire form. So here we go. We have the same length validation. So this is great. We have validation features now, and we can scale our validation. It's going to be great. But our form's still hard-coded. A lot of apps need dynamic forms, maybe user-defined forms. TakeShape does. Any CMS does. So let's make our form configurable. And then in this example, we define our own custom form schema, essentially. So over here, we've defined an array of form fields. So it's got familiar attributes like name, title, required characters, whether it's required or not, regex validation, all this. And what we've done is we've offloaded creating the form into our own higher order component. We've called it Form Builder. So Form Builder, what it does is it maps our JSON to a joy schema and then has a component where we map over all of our fields and we create Redux Form fields. So great. So now with this little bit of configuration, we now have the same form that we've carried through this whole example, and it works just the same. Well, now we have configuration powered forms. That's amazing. But now we're doing another type of problem where we're sort of mapping our own custom syntax to Joy's syntax. And, that's not really ideal. Maybe there's something, maybe I could just define that directly in JSON. Well, after a bit of Googling, we found out, of course there is. There's JSON schema, and it's an open standard. It has comprehensive features just like Joy, and it's just JSON. You can use it anywhere. So here we go. Here we have our own custom version versus JSON schema. And as you can see, it's a few lines shorter. And so the power of the community, you get a better solution. And so let's try that out. So what we've done is we've replaced our higher order function where our form builder here now is powered by JSON schema. And so down here, there's some small changes that we needed to make to iterate through the schema because it's an object as opposed to an array. That's cool. But now up top, the validation, we just simply pass in the schema. And what we're doing is we're defining a new instance of AJV, which stands for another JSON schema validator, literally. So we have the same form. It works the same way. It's great. Now we have a more sort of official syntax. So let's see. Oh my gosh, we're smart, right? Right? We got it. We're the best. We figured this out before anybody else. Not so fast. Mozilla figured this out, and they have an official JSON schema form component that basically does everything that we just demonstrated right out of the box, right here in one line, aside from this little bootstrap stuff. And it even looks nicer because it's got bootstrap on it. We'll talk about that later. So that's really cool. But React JSON schema form actually does way more stuff. It handles nested forms. It handles arrays. It handles basically a fully rich JSON tree. So you can create a form that represents any type of JSON data that you want. And it just builds out the form for you. It's kind of magic. And so that's great. It has all the features we want, nested forms, etc. But there are some cons. It's somebody else's package. It's hard to customize. There's Bootstrap. It's hard for us to integrate with our Redux app. And then one of the features we came to expect with Redux Form was this part of multi-part form. So if you have a wizard type experience, you want each little panel to be its own form, but it all to tie back into one set of data. So we rolled our own. But with all the learnings of the community, and we were building on top of known standards, and this is what we came up with. This is what's powering TakeShape. This is what we initially dubbed schema form, a total ripoff of Mozilla's component, but it's a little bit more adjustable. So if you can see my cursor on the screen, otherwise I'll point. We have these things called form configs, and form configs define what the components that make up your actual form do. So over here we have the schema, which defines the data that you want, the correct data that you want. And then this, so over here we have a sidebar. So this has the toggle for enabled and the date. And so we're able to have multiple form components sitting on a page in different parts of the tree and still be editing the same data. So that was a solution, a feature that we valued a lot. So that's the end of the code segment. Here, let's go. So one quick note before we stop this is sort of like the app that we were trying to fit it into. So we're using React as our front end, naturally, because we're at React Adelphia. We use a bunch of WebSockets to populate content into our app, and we have reducers. And so this is the ecosystem that we're trying to build into. With that, I want to introduce to you to ShapeForm. And so ShapeForm is coming out today. We actually, because of the meetup, we ripped it out of our code base. We did our best to strip out all the proprietary stuff, and we're releasing it on NPM tonight.
Yeah.
So hopefully you don't have to roll your own. You don't have to do what we do, but you probably will. So help us make ShapeForm better. It's an open source project. We're gonna flip the switch. I don't know whether we've done that yet, but come check it out, play around with it, contribute. We'd like to hear what you have to say about our solution. Maybe it's not so good to you. Also, we have another meetup tomorrow night, a JAMstack meetup. So JAMstack Philly tomorrow night. And then the other thing that I want to mention is TakeShape has a new product coming out. So if you're interested in the JAMstack and headless CMS and APIs and how to combine them together, then you'll be interested in TakeShape Mesh. So you should sign up for our beta at takeshape.io/signup. And I returned you safely back to the Shire, as Mark always wanted. And so thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Andrew? Angel?
Is the open source project, what am I trying to say? First, beginner friendly?
Yes. There will be code examples and a storybook for you to play around with the various components that come with the project.
Thank you.
Yep.
Here I go.
Getting your steps in today. So inside your CMS, does it handle like conditional logic for form fields? So like answer question A, skip to answer 5 or question 5, stuff like that.
Yeah, so the beautiful part about being able to split out multiple form configs is you can actually generate those configs dynamically. So you can choose which components to include and exclude, but also by splitting out the forms into multiple stages, you can choose, like, let me show this config versus that config. And so you build in a lot of flexibility. We also have the ability to make changes to the form in Redux. So you actually can control based on other actions what happens to the form. So there's sort of a more user-friendly solution, then there's more advanced solution.
Anybody else?
Hey, can you use your package without Redux?
You can, without knowing that it's Redux, sure.
Okay.
Because there's a provider that ships with it.
Okay.
But it will, for the time being, use Redux under the hood.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Specifically in the area I'm in?
I mean, even if they weren't, dude,
Well,
I seen the way you fly.
Jason?
Yeah, so it seems like you can get some pretty advanced form configurations. What's your testing stack look like for that?
For form configuration specifically, or how do we test the form components themselves?
How do you test the form components?
So what's great about the form configuration is it all boils down to custom widgets. So each widget is testable just like a regular React component. So using Jest and combining it with either snapshots or Enzyme, you can test the behavior of each individual component. And then the overall core, the thing that iterates over the schema and builds out your form for you, that's all unit tested using similar techniques, but with stub widgets.
I think we got time for one more. No? Cool. Andrew, thank you so much.
Give it up for Andrew.
Thank you, guys.